these pieces, broken and scattered, in mercy gathered, mended and whole, empty-handed, but not forsaken. I've been set free. I've been set free. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see you now. Take our failure, you take our weakness, you set your treasure in jars of clay. Take this heart, Lord, I'll be your vessel, the world to see your love in me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see the love in you. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh yes, I once was lost, but now I am found. Blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see your love. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. Did you grab the offering? Bring it up. this is the day that you have made. We stop and we pause and we celebrate the gift that you give to us. Each breath, each thought, each heartbeat, let it celebrate you, your love and your goodness. Amen. So before we're seated, let's just say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Please be seated. It's gone. I don't know where it's gone. There's those words in that song when we talk about looking into the eyes of Jesus and seeing love. One of the most important reasons the Lord had to come, that God had to dwell in human form, is so that we can see God, so he could be visible. And now that the Lord has ascended, how do we see him? Well, we can look to the Word, we can read those stories, but more important than anything, we can look into each other's eyes. And we can see love, we can see forgiveness, we can see the transformation of God at work in our lives, and we can be inspired to be more like him. I'd like to tell you about Don Coble. Pastor Don Coble, although Lieutenant Colonel is actually an acceptable title as well. If you looked at this man today, you would see the vigour of strength, a real man. 25 years he'd been a pastor, but before that, he spent many, many years in the military. He did two terms in Vietnam, won a lot of awards for bravery, and you'd think, here is someone I want to be like. But actually looking at Don's life, it's just not like that. If I take you back to 13, that's when the problems really began for Don, at 13. Shauna, how old are you? 14? 14? Oh, you're 13, you're about to become 14, isn't it? Yeah. So you should be able to relate to this, although you won't relate to it in other ways. Here is Don, 13, one of 12. He has 12 brothers and sisters. He's growing up in southern Missouri. Beautiful country. They used to say, oh, you kids must have one leg shorter than the other, because all those farms with the hills, walking around with. Kids would go out in the morning and you could see them at the end of the day. They go out and play all day. And he has beautiful, fond memories right up until he's 13. There was just such love in his life. Because at 13, that's when his father died of a heart attack. And Don will tell you that he loved his father immensely. So much that even 6 months later, he hadn't really come to terms with what had happened. It just wasn't real for him. And that's when anger and bitterness began to take root in his heart. He was angry. He was angry at his dad, but he knew he shouldn't be. But more than anything, he was angry at the world. I mean, what's fair about that? Losing your dad at 13. And this man, he describes him as a man who loved each one of his brothers and sisters really well. I get convicted hearing that because I have 7, and I don't feel that I have enough time and energy and love for all my children. I don't. But here is a man who loved his children so well that his son was destroyed. So he said, look, Missouri wasn't the kind of place where you'd go and find gangs to hang out, to get that anger and that pain and that resentment out. So he started them. And he said it started at high school at the gym. He started his home brew project down at the back of the gym. But the principal didn't like that very much, and he was expelled. So he went out and found more people to hang out with and cause more problems. And by the time he was 17, an older friend of his said, I think it's about time you joined the military. You went into service. So his friend, the deputy sheriff, put him on a train and said, see you later. And he spent 3 years in the military, and they slapped him up the back front all over. They brought this man into order, and he needed it. His father was very disciplinary, but he'd lost that. He'd lost his dad, and now he needed something. So the military began to improve his life. After 3 years, he came back home, and his dear friend met him at the train, the deputy sheriff, took him out for coffee and said, things have changed around here. We've cleaned things up a lot, and there just really isn't anything for you here. What did he do? He just went back to the military. And that's when he did his 2 services in Vietnam. He also got married in that process to a lovely church girl. But this church girl didn't really know the Lord. She was just a church goer. Her family took her to church. Everything seemed nice at first. You know, when you first get married, it always is special, isn't it? Until the varnish wears off and you start to think, you start to feel that emptiness. And of course, Don had not dealt with his anger and resentment. So his family became sort of more of a commodity. The second time he agreed to go back to Vietnam, his wife was in such a bad state because he would drink every weekend, work hard all week, and then hit the alcohol hard on the weekend. And he pulled his wife down. The second time he agreed to go back, he came home to find that she had attempted suicide. But fortunately, she failed. And then one of the neighbours came over and shared Jesus with her. He said, look, you need the Lord. I've been in church. No, you need the Lord. We need that love. We need to be loved by God. And her heart was changed and transformed. And Don describes how he'd come home, and in the past where she'd get angry and resentful at him, she'd just be loving and kind, and it just made him angrier. And she says to him, why don't you take our children to children's church? Oh, all right, I will. And that's when it began to change for him. He started to hear this message of Jesus. He didn't like it, but it wouldn't leave him alone. It bugged him. And eventually he realised he needed to do something with his life. And he took that step and let the Lord come in. And things began to improve. They were close to getting divorced, and now their life was turning around. But I want us to focus here on where things really went wrong for Don. Okay, the Lord wasn't in his life at that point, but neither was his father anymore. And mum and dads are like God to us when we're little. They can do no wrong when we're little, but they will. Shauna, mum and dad will let you down, I promise you. Because they love you, but they're limited. They'll fail you. They will. It'll happen. And they're the moments where anger wants to come in, hurt, resentment, where we're angry at our parents. But we have to realise none of us can really love each other unconditionally. Not the way we want and desperately need. Only the Lord. But when we begin to let the Lord in, we're a vessel. We begin to let the Lord in. Then we can start to experience that love that we're always looking for. But we must remember, Shauna, I promise, mum and dad make mistakes. Ask my kids. They make mistakes. They'll do things wrong. And we've got to go to the Lord at that point, and we've got to decide that we're not going to be resentful. We're going to choose to love, and we're going to choose to forgive. Let's have a look at the virtue today, forgiveness. Gay, would you open up the order of service by reading on the front there for us about forgiveness?
Forgiveness helps us break the power of transference or projection. Forgiveness enables wounds from the past to heal. It frees us to engage in future relationships that might emulate something of the past and potentially trigger us into transference. It allows for resolutions when all other strategies have failed. It gives us the strength to look honestly at our problems or those of others, to face them with the intent of letting go and even grieving for our losses. It helps us identify and give a name to our unfinished business and thus move forward. It brings clarity to what would otherwise be painful distortions of reality. We can again see ourselves and others through a larger lens instead of a narrow field of pain and failure.
Seeing people through that larger lens of forgiveness and mercy instead of the little narrow lens, you'll have all experienced this, but whether you realise it or not, there's transference. Have you met someone and gone, there's something about them I don't like? I can't quite put my finger on it. And what's really strange is it's not fair that I'm not even giving this person a chance. Have you done that? I mean, we've all experienced this. That's called transference. That's where something in that person, the way they said something, could be an accent, could be the way they move some part of their body, could be something about them has reminded you of an unresolved issue in your life. And we don't want to face that unresolved issue. We've buried it. So now we find ourselves not even liking this person. But is that really what's happening? Or is it that we're not wanting to confront what's going on inside us here? So this idea of transference, a very important issue. When you're finding it hard to forgive someone, you could be holding on to hurts that other people have done to you, and somehow or another this person who maybe has performed a some kind of micro transgression against you, but you are now holding them hostage because of a very real painful situation that's happened in your life. Transference. Forgiveness gives us a way out. I always like to think of forgiveness. It's there for giving. And what exactly are we giving? Mercy. We're giving mercy. I love the way Jesus says, those who are forgiven much love much. Isn't that interesting? Those who are forgiven much love much. How does that work? How does that work? Sean, have you got any friends at school who, you've had a real hard time with them, but you're still really good friends? Yeah. There's lots of little things that you've done wrong, or maybe they've done wrong, and then you've gone, don't worry about it. And they're the friends that we get closest to. They're the ones that we actually really bond to. Let's have a look at the definition of forgiveness here. Take a moment examining your life. Let's consider an area in your life where pain, resentment, unresolved issues have been caused because of unforgiveness. Perhaps somebody has refused to forgive you. What was the impact on you? When someone was not willing to forgive you, it was an enduring pain, wasn't it? When someone's not forgiven you, it's left you in pain. The definition of forgiveness in the dictionary is to cease to feel resentment against an offender. Pardon, to give up resentment or a claim of requital. To give up resentment. What's resentment? Can somebody help me here? What is resentment? Never thought that one before. We all know what it is. We all feel it. We all had it at times. But regret could be in there. Oh, I like that. Holding on to. Okay, you want to have a go at what resentment might be? Pull it apart. Use language. Pull it apart. Re to again.
Revisit.
Revisit. Well said. It comes from both the French and the Latin, particularly the French. Sentir. To feel. To feel. Resentment means to feel all over again. Wow. There's your holding on, Chris. You're holding on. So what exactly are we holding on to when we're holding on to resentment? Anger, hurt, pain. We keep reliving it, and it goes something like this. One of these scenarios. I like this phrase. It helps me. Don't nurse it. Don't curse it. Don't rehearse it. Just disperse it. Don't nurse it. What's nursing it? Oh, can you believe, Brian, what she said to me? Oh, I'm livid. Or would you say livid? I don't know. But we're rehearsing it in our mind. But it may not be our partner, often up here in this prison up here where it's being rehearsed over and over again. Oh, and we keep coming back to it and revisiting it. How about so that's don't nurse it, don't rehearse it. I tell you what, he or she ever says that to me next time, I'm going to say this. Oh, I wish I had have said that. That's the rehearsing. So you're nursing it. Oh, you're rehearsing it. Wait till it happens another time. Okay. Don't nurse it. Don't rehearse it. Don't curse it. That's a good one. Don't curse it. That's where you're cutting them up into 1,000 little pieces inside your mind for what they did. Solution, let it go. Just disperse it. And when we think about what the word resentment means, to feel again, forgiveness, what are we really giving? Love, we're giving away our pain. We're giving away our pain. We're choosing to no longer hold on to the pain, to the anger and the suffering. It's love. We're giving love. I mean, think about the Lord doing the very last stage of his salvation process, glorifying his human, right? Here he is, having to put himself completely at the mercy of human beings who judge him as guilty, who despise him, who sentence him and put him to death. Wow, that's pretty powerful. That's love, isn't it? That's love. To not hold on, but just to let go.
I heard a saying once that unforgiveness for someone is like you drinking the poison and expecting them to die.
To die. Do you know who said that?
No.
Nelson Mandela. Wow. I mean, there can be debates about it, but he definitely said it. We know that he said it. Because he's a man who thought that he could turn his country around by guerrilla warfare. Ever felt that? Ever felt like you wanted to just rise up against your oppressive powers in your life? Okay? Could be mum, dad that you want him to rise up against, but you want to rise up. He thought military, that some sort of coup would be the answer. Ended up in jail, found love, found forgiveness, found God. Found God. And came out and became president. So that's a profound story. So when someone like that says unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick and die, that's powerful stuff. Thank you, Chris. That's good.
It's good to know where it comes from. That's excellent.
Look, I could be wrong, but my memory says Nelson Mandela. So
Sounds like something.
she said, yeah. So if I'm wrong, forgive me. So synonyms: absolution, amnesty, pardon, remission. I like that. Remission, remittal. When I hear the word remission, I really hear the word mission. Remission is, like the 12 being sent out on their mission. And then Jesus dies and they get despondent. So what do? You go fishing. That's what you do. And then at some point the Lord came in and there was a remission. He gave them their mission back. So when we're learning forgiveness, we're getting the mission back of love, of life, and why we're really here. In that remission. Any other words stand out for anyone there? Absolution, amnesty, pardon, remission, remittal. Do you want to read those antonyms for us? Okay. The opposites. Shauna, these are the opposites.
Penalty, punishment, retribution, conviction, sentence, assessment, charge, fine, imposition, levying, castigation, chastening, chastisement, condemnation.
Wow, anyone grab you there? Okay.
Retribution.
Retribution. There's a lot of legality in those words, isn't there? There's a whole lot of getting justice. Think about it. That forgiveness means no longer holding on to the need for justice. Wow. And I often tell myself, look, I can dive in here and try and get justice, and whatever I end up with will literally be crumbs, really. Or I can step back, trust God that when He brings justice, it really will be just, isn't it? That if someone needs punishing, the punishment will be there. And I don't mean that like God's trying to punish. I just mean that sometimes we keep sticking our hand in the fire until it burns. Let God do justice and I will truly be happy. Where if I often want to get in there and try and fix it myself. So hopefully that helps you. Next time you find yourself in a situation wanting justice, try that. Try stepping back and saying, Lord, I want you to fix that instead of me to be the one to try and fix it. And what I have found I can't say every single time, but to the best of my knowledge, is that God does a beautiful job, and I am almost always happy with the result. Step back, let go. Don't re-feel. A challenge. Don't re-feel, don't be resentment. How about that quote from Catherine Ponder? Do you want to read that for us?
When you hold resentment toward another, you are bound to that person or condition by an emotional link that is stronger than steel. Forgiveness is the only way to dissolve that link and get free.
Wow, and there are all sorts of biological links as well. Where attention goes, energy flows. If you are thinking on someone, as this passage is saying, as this quote from Catherine is saying, if you're thinking on them, you are producing new brain cells all the time, and those new brain cells are being put to work upon the assassination of that person. Think about it. You're linking yourself to them in a way that you probably don't want to be linked. I love it. Ian has said it to me many times over the years. Ian says, don't give it energy, Darren. Which is Ian's way of saying, don't give it attention. Just let it go. Let it go. Don't give it attention. The next one there.
There is no love without forgiveness, and there is no forgiveness without love.
Wow, Brian McGill. That's straight out of the Bible for me. There is no love without forgiveness or forgiveness without love. How about this one, Robert Quillen?
Happy marriage is the union of two good forgivers.
Two good forgivers. I love it. It's true. It's true. So you have an unhappy marriage. You've probably got one who's really good at forgiving and the other who's really good at punishing. Or maybe you're both really good at punishing.
Sincere forgiveness isn't coloured with expectations that the other person apologises or change. Don't worry whether or not they finally understand you. Love them and release them. Life feeds back truth to people in its own way, and time, just like it does for you and me.
Isn't that beautiful? And George MacDonald was a Swedenborgian and an author. He wrote The Princess and the Dragon. Is that, it was A Princess and the Dragon or something, or one of those. But he was an author and
Sarah Patterson.
Well, Sarah Patterson, was it? Yeah. Well, he definitely was an author, and we've got some of his books at home. But he was Swedenborgian, and you can see there that wisdom coming out in what he's saying. Look, let him go. But what about? No, let him go. Life has its own way of feeding the truth that that person needs to receive.
To forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you.
Well, there you go, Chris. There's that poison and prisoner and the one that you're talking about.
To forgive is the highest, most beautiful form of love. In return, you will receive untold peace and happiness.
Wow. Isn't that's it? I mean, within the new church, we look at marriage love as the highest form of love. It really is. But we're told here, and Robert Muller was a deep thinker, to forgive is the highest, most beautiful form of love. Tie that back in with the idea that a happy marriage is made up of two good forgivers. Isn't that beautiful? That idea that when we really love our partner, we're saying, I'm here to give you the room you need to make mistakes and become a better person.
Forgiveness is the fragrance the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it.
Wow, Mark Twain. You can tell there's the poet and author and Mark Twain.
Always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much.
I had to put that one in there. It's not that deep.
Oscar Wilde.
Yeah, Oscar Wilde. It's not very deep, but I just thought that was funny.
The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong.
Wow, now Mahatma Gandhi. Who knew that better than Mahatma Gandhi?
Forgiveness does not change the past, but it does enlarge the future.
Paul Boas. Yeah.
Without forgiveness, life is governed by an endless cycle of resentment and retaliation.
Okay, so stop there for a moment and come back to that idea of what resentment is. Without forgiveness, you're going to get on the treadmill or the cycle of continually feeling over and over and over again the violations that others have done to you. I mean, this shows us the power of forgiveness, that we get free from this treadmill of pain that life will offer you if you choose to be resentful.
Forgiving does not erase the bitter past. A healed memory is not a deleted memory. Instead, forgiving what we cannot forget creates a new way to remember. We change the memory of our past into a hope for our future.
And that's such a powerful statement there. I call it reframing. You can't help but revisit things of the past. Stuff's going to come up, and it will be things that people have done to you, very much. Our brain is wired to remember what hurts more than it is wired to remember what gives us pleasure. Our two greatest motivators, pleasure and pain. What hurts? So what we have to do, and this is the power of having the spiritual sense of God's word, when this is being brought up in you again, revisit it in the light of spiritual wisdom. Revisit it, look at it, reframe it. And one of the things I often tell myself is that person was operating in the best light they had. Even if they were being terribly wicked, they were operating in the best light they had. And I find that really helps me to release. They did the best they could with the light they had, and a release. So reframing. Another idea of reframing might be, well, here's a really good one from a neurobiological point of view. If you're doing exercise, if you're cleaning, gals and guys, you'll love this. If you're cleaning and you're telling yourself this is a chore, you will start to produce negative types of hormones that are undesirable, cortisol, and you get stressed. On the other hand, if you tell yourself you're exercising, just telling yourself you're exercising while you're doing chores, you start to produce dopamine and positive types of hormone. So hanging out the washing, you're stretching and you're doing exercise. This is why you can go for a long walk. I know Gay loves her walks. Long, brisk walk, put the body under tremendous stress, and you feel fantastic when you're tired, but you feel fantastic when you come home because you're flooded with positive hormones. And the only difference in our biology, the only difference is how we're framing it. That's it. How you're thinking about this experience. So next time something negative is being brought up for you, look at how you can reframe that so you can let it go and move on.
So don't think of each step as effort, but opportunity.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good.
There's so many spiritual meanings that people use.
All the
They say
time.
it every day, and it's just a saying. But there's spiritual meanings in so many things that we say every day.
The funny thing is, you'd almost think that we're all spiritual beings.
You'd think so. Yeah. Oh no.
That's true. So one more, Mason Cooley.
Forgiveness is like faith. You have to keep reviving it.
I like that. Forgiveness is like faith. You have to keep reviving it.
And forgiveness is the giving, and so the receiving of life.
Beautiful. This is the quote here, Luke 7:47. Before I read it, have a quick look at the context. There were so many good quotes about forgiveness, by the way, that I ended up putting lots of people quotes and not as many scriptural quotes. But here's the context. We looked at this a couple months ago with the woman who broke the alabaster jar of oil and poured it over Jesus. We weren't quite sure who she was, but later on we see that Mary does it at the end of Jesus' ministry, and it's pretty clear this woman was more than likely Mary. So what it tells us here is that Jesus is having lunch with a religious thinker, a Pharisee, a person who's used to not forgiving, a person who's used to judging and condemning other people to make oneself feel good. He's having lunch with this fellow, and in runs this woman, breaks the oil, pours it all over him with tears, real tears, and she's wiping the tears off his body with her hair. We find out in the next chapter, Mary had 7 demons cast out of her. And that's why, when you think about this act of coming and breaking the oil and pouring it over Jesus, what was going on inside this woman? Well, he tells us. He says here, Jesus says, because the Pharisee turned to Jesus and said, well, he didn't turn, but in his own mind he said, if this man were a holy man, if this man were a prophet, he'd know what kind of woman is touching him. And in response to that, Jesus turns around and says, Simon, I have something I want to say to you. Say on, Lord. He said, who forgives much? He said, who loves much? Those who have been given a little debt, or those who've been forgiven a great debt? He says, I suppose the one who's been forgiven a great debt. And he says, here, Wherefore I say unto you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But to whom little is forgiven, the same loveth little. Now, what I want you to realise here is that I'm happy to be the chief of sinners here. I'm probably worse than all of you. We all are actually forgiven much. We just don't realise it. You know, to the degree that I'm religious, I tell myself what a good person I am. Or to that degree that I'm humble and realise how much I need the Lord, to that degree I'm letting the Lord love on me. I was a young Christian. There was a book that came out called A Divine Revelation of Hell by Mary Baxter. Terrifying book for young Christians. But it was really waking people up. And this friend of mine, he said, I can't handle that. That can't be from God. I said, why? He said, well, it's not very edifying. Why would God give a revelation of hell like that? That's not edifying. And I thought about it, and then I went back to my friend and I said, Matthew, hell isn't edifying as a revelation on its own, especially if you think God's sending people there. But when you get a revelation of what hell is, what we do to ourselves, how we take ourselves into these kind of bondages and suffer, when you get a realization of what exactly God has forgiven you of, what He's saving you from, you can't help but love God all the more. How's that not edifying? It is. Now, God's not punishing people and sending them to hell. He's saving them from their own perpetual cycle of refeeling over and over and over again. And the way out is resentment, is forgiveness for that resentment. Let's read the paragraph on the back and look at the card, and then we'll do the meditation. In the next life, people who have brought with them the notion that a person is made righteous by faith in an instant and completely cleansed from sin are dumbfounded when they learn that regeneration is effected by means that are numerically without limit and beyond description. Pause there for a moment. Salvation and regeneration in your life is happening all the time, from the moment you're born to the moment you die. But Christianity has kind of slipped over the centuries into this idea that you say a prayer and it's instant. And it just doesn't work that way. And that's what he's talking about here. He's met people in the afterlife who were shocked to discover it doesn't work that way. What does he say? These people laugh at their own ignorance, which they also call madness. That is, at the idea they held in the world regarding instantaneous forgiveness of sins and justification. Sometimes they are told, Lord forgives sins of everyone who in his heart desires forgiveness. But this does not mean that that person is separated from the devil's crew, to whom they are bound through the evils which go along with the life which they bring with them in its entirety. So pause again. So people are getting educated in the next life and they're going, look, as soon as you want forgiveness, God's already given it. Instantly it's yours. But that doesn't mean you're free of sin and evil. You've got to do the work. You've got to take up your cross and you've got to follow the Lord in laying down the biggest of them all, resentment, judgment. When we get loved by God, it's so much easier to just love each person, warts and all. He goes on to say, after this, these people then learn from experience that being separated from the hells is being separated from one's sins, and that this cannot possibly be accomplished except by thousands of ways known to the Lord alone. A process which, if you can believe it, continues on forever, stage after stage after stage. So when we get to heaven, we're going to continue to have the Lord unlock things in us, release things from us. Isn't that exciting? Heaven's not static and boring. I'm there on my cloud playing a harp. No, we're going to be continually growing and having things unlocked in us that we have carried this whole life. So let's look at the card. Forgiveness, the power of love to release the past and enter freedom. Lord, may I have more of that. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamour and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice, and be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. And here is from Secrets of Heaven 9014. The Lord forgives everyone their sins. Nevertheless, they do not come to be forgiven unless the person sincerely repents, refrains from evil, and afterward leads a life of faith and charity, doing so to the end of his life. When this happens, the person receives spiritual life from the Lord, called new life. And you get a sense here why, if we go back into the quotes, Mason really understood this. He said, forgiveness is like faith. You need to keep reviving it. So this month, let's pay careful attention to any time we're experiencing some emotional pain. That's your clue. You feel some pain? Pay attention to that. Who do you hold responsible for that pain? Release that person from guilt and blame. It might even be yourself. Release that person from guilt and blame and view this moment as a teachable moment, and then grieve if you need to. Let go and let God. So that's our focus for the month. Now before we close, let's do this meditation together on the inside there. I choose to not perpetuate pain and resentment. I am quick to listen and forgive. I allow the Lord to heal my past. I give myself and others the room to change. I am thankful, Lord, for the gift of forgiveness. It allows me to heal and help others into the freedom that comes from wholeness. I'm going to pray in a moment, but just before I do, is there any last thoughts that are coming up for people that you want to express? I'm going to give you a moment to say something, or share something. Or
Well, actually, it made me think about a girl that sent me into Coventry.
Oh, Coventry, right. How old were you? Okay.
Oh, I was late 20s.
Late 20s.
She was just jealous, insanely jealous.
Ah.
And she came to, funnily enough, about 18 months later, she came to live next door to me. And the only way to deal with it was just to go and see her.
To see her and love her, forgive her. Yeah.
Put it behind you. It hadn't bothered me too much because I knew I wasn't in the wrong. But it does help you to look at the situation with a more forgiving light, with a healthier light.
A healthier light. Isn't it amazing how, I mean, I can hear Gay saying here too, it didn't bother me that much. But it's powerful how it's still with you, isn't it?
Yeah.
The experience is still there from decades and decades ago. It's still with you.
Having said that, we broke down in the buggy in front of the gate, right in front of the gate, security gate into the residential area by the village. And as we came to a stop, it sounded like an axle dropped to the floor.
Oh,
The
wow.
car immediately behind blew the horn furiously. She was so angry.
And this happened together with that girl. Is that what you...
No, it's got nothing to do.
Oh, it got nothing to do with that.
Just a couple of days ago.
Oh, this is a couple of days ago. Oh, right.
And I went flying down to him and said,
You gave him a piece of his mind.
I did. I gave him a piece of my mind.
Gave him a piece of his mind. Guan, there was a thought or an idea or a question? Or...
But he came and helped. Sorry, Glenn.
I clearly feel this sermon is to me. He knows I'm currently struggling with someone. Can I forgive or can I just ignore? I really feel struggling. This sermon is purposely aimed at me.
It can't be, but it was for me.
No, it's not. It was for me.
Yeah, that's it. And you know what's incredible as we keep going through these virtues is in reality, each one of them is the Lord. When we learn to practice these virtues, we're embodying more and more of the Lord. And forgiveness is a big one. It really is a big one. Ian,
It does take time, though, doesn't it? So,
it takes a lifetime.
yeah.
And then an afterlife as well.
Timeless. Yeah.
And then in the afterlife, we'll keep going. Ian, there was something. Say again.
A new way to remember.
A new way to remember.
That's from this here.
That's what you.
I believe he read the writings because that's exactly a quote from the writings about forgiveness.
Oh, okay, Lewis
Smedes.
Lewis Meads.
He.
A new way. Do you want me to say that up the front? Yeah.
It's from the writings say under forgiveness towards others. The writings say it is a true forgiveness of another is a new way to remember.
Wow. So Ian's just highlighting to me a passage in the writings where the wording is pretty much identical here, if you look in the order of service, to what Lewis says here, Lewis Smedes. And so that makes Ian lean towards this idea that Lewis would have been a reader of the writings, because let's have one last look at it. It says here, was it Lewis? There's two quotes from Lewis Smedes, yeah. Forgiveness does not erase a bitter past. A healed memory is not a deleted memory. Instead, forgiving what we cannot forget creates a new way to remember. So that phrase in the writings, Swedenborg says, true forgiveness is giving ourselves a new way to remember. Wow, that's beautiful.
More loving, merciful.
You know that quote too, do you? A new, more loving. A new, more loving, merciful way to remember. Look, I'll find that quote for us, and we'll send it out via email. If we do that, Ian, you help me find that quote, and we'll send it out. How fascinating is that? A bit of detective work there.
This is going to sound cool. I had a dream about somebody the other night, that deceased, but he rubbed me the wrong way when he was alive. He saw me, someone assaulted me, and he was pretty much having a go at me. Anyway, I dreamt about him the other night. I hadn't thought about this man. This is a girlfriend when in my 20s. Her brother, he passed away 5 years ago. And I dreamt about it. It was so strong. And we were talking, and I felt this, like him and I were going to fight.
In the dream, yeah.
And all of a sudden we laid our, this is going to sound strange, we laid down our weapons and we spoke. And we've got more in common than we think.
Wow.
We cooked some T-bone steaks in the oven. And you know what? I felt so good. I saw this, it was like he was coming to my dream to don't hold on. Because he watched me get assaulted by this, he was laughing. But it was like he was coming into me and saying, don't hold resentment. So today,
Yes,
really,
don't hold resentment.
this was fresh, it was only the other night. And I hadn't, you know, I got on Facebook and I thought, I didn't know how he passed away.
Right.
And it was the anniversary of his death on the 30th of September.
Wow.
And she wrote for the anniversary, my brother decided to take his life 5 years ago today. So that was quite. So this is like God and Jamie were saying, don't hold on to the way you remember. You know, and I felt this love for him in my dream. And it's been released and I feel free now. Because whenever I thought of him, I thought, and you stood there and laughed at me getting beaten.
This brings up a whole interesting subject too, Chris, because we read about the emotional link that we have with people, but there's a spiritual link too. When we think about people who've gone on now, we're affecting them in the afterlife and they're affecting us. So isn't that a good reason to live a good life? So after you're gone, everybody who's now left on earth is grateful for you, not hating on you. It's a good thought. That's a powerful thought. But I also get the idea of lay your weapons down. There's forgiveness, isn't it? There's that let it go. Because weapons are for the enemy. They're for darkness. They're for evil negative states and evil negative spirits. They're not for each other.
And I said to my friend the other day, he's going through a rough patch, and I said, I use your quote, I said, stay strong, choose love, soul warrior. He loved that. I love that saying. I'm going to remember it.
Good.
Yeah,
I love it.
That's what I learned here. I'm helping people, and it's the best feeling is what I learned here.
Wow.
Is I can use it because I think that's what God wants us to do.
Amen. That's it. We're here for that purpose.
And that steak represents love.
And the steak represents love.
Goodness.
Well, the scriptures talk about eating the meat, to leave the milk and move to the meat. Wow. That's good, Gay. That's really good. Any final thoughts, and I'll pray? Yes, Dr. Noel?
There's a Danish philosopher, Søren Kierkegaard.
Yes.
He's written a book on authentic life. So he defines forgiveness as the fundamental philosophy of Christianity.
So the camera gets to hear it.
Okay. Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, gives a perfect definition for forgiveness. He says, by forgiveness, love hides a multitude of sins. Forgiveness takes the forgiven sin away. By this anthropomorphism, Kierkegaard seeks to express an essentially pastoral reassurance that not only are sins forgiven, they are no longer seen or recalled when God looks at the believer.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. Isaiah 42?
He neither sees nor hears. Who is blind but my servant?
Yes.
Who is deaf? The Lord doesn't see or listen or know. He doesn't want to know about our sin.
That's powerful. Isaiah 42, who is blind like my servant? When the Lord looks at us, he's not looking at our faults, he's looking at who we are becoming in him. Yeah. Let's close in prayer. Say after me, dear Lord, let your word today stay in my thoughts, stay in my feelings. Let me be quick, Lord, to forgive others, to notice when I'm hurting, and to release that pain, and to feel your love for both myself and for the other. Amen. Dear Jesus, may your presence stay with us today. May we be more like you simply by hearing your word and practicing it. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his everlasting peace. Amen. So friends, I encourage you to just have a cup of tea, coffee and chat. I'll put that song on again to play and I'm going to close the word. Just take a moment to say hi.